now.
Just kidding.
Welcome, everyone. This is our Thursday morning production call. My name is Joe Martinez. We got a couple of really cool hosts today. We got Mr. Elijah Carujo and James Martinez, and we're going to talk about some fun stuff on the production. Today, we're going to talk about words that hurt your sales. We're going to talk about assuming the sell and making sure you're not asking questions and you're telling folks what's about to happen. But first, I love to talk about, right? This is an hour-long call. I want to make sure everyone gets the value out of it. Highly suggest you get a pen and notepad out. We take notes even still to this day. That's kind of the whole reason of this call, because we go through literally what do we see our agencies and what we currently are struggling with, because production is something you don't ever stop training on. We continue to work on ourselves, right? One week we'll focus on show rate and we get a whole bunch of people to show up, but then because we were focusing on that, we kind of stop, let's maybe doing the FIF inside the appointment, right? And we're like, hey, you know what, I need to focus on this now. So it's always something you're working on. That's how you stay consistently writing business. So we're going to give you an hour long of some really cool stuff. What I highly suggest, take lots of notes. Don't go change your entire business, right? Just apply some of the things that, hey, you know what, I'm not doing that. I'd like to add that to my appointments, right? Just add a few things. James always says it best, right? Add one to three things, and then just apply it to your business. You will see yourself writing more business because of that. And then what we humbly ask is you post, if it did help you help another family, post it on Band, right? Hey, you know what? I got this from the production call. And it helped me, right? Wrote blank applications and APV. It really does help us as an organization, right? Because if Paul got something and wrote an application, posted it on Band, right, then Taylor can see and say, hey, you know what? Paul was using it. Let me add that as well. It just helps us as a huge community to write more business and help more families. So we're going to get started again. What we're going to talk about is assuming the sale and some really cool stuff on stop asking questions, letting families know what's about to happen, and some words that kind of hurt your sales, right? So a lot of times we're excited and we're nervous, so we're not listening either to ourselves or to the client, right? Because it's the first couple of times you got somebody to hop on a Zoom, or you booked an appointment and it's not going the way you wanted it to go, right? Because the client's kind of interrupting you. And so easily we get thrown off track, right? And when that happens, we're kind of like on high alert, and we stop listening to the little things, right? And a lot of times it could hurt us if we're asking questions, asking for permission, or saying the wrong thing. So we're going to give you all just a couple of nuggets. I want to dig into first the assumption part. um, right, we're growing. There's a ton of y'all on this call now. We haven't talked about this in a while, but I always love to talk about, we have the best leads in the world.
I agree.
Right? Like
I've worked
we
leads outside of Symmetry, and they're garbage in comparison and more expensive.
we literally have the best leads out there. Like, so like what was it? I wrote like 34, 40, or I think like 4 grand last 2 days ago. And it was a lead that came in that day. I called them, right? And it was a husband and wife. So I called them, and I think it came in early. So by the time I put it in my system, I called her. It was probably like around 11 or 11 a.m. noon. Called her. She said, hey, we're at work. Call us back at 6:30. That's when we're available for both of us to hop on Zoom. They're like, we won't be home, but we'll be together where we can hop on Zoom and have plenty of time. I'm like, hey, it's going to take 20, 30 minutes. They're like, yeah. We'll make sure we can sit down with you and run an appointment. I'm like, great, perfect. And sure enough, they show up. We help them. They're like, I need all of it, right? Go ahead and give me everything. Instant approval. Today, I get a deposit for $3,500 from that appointment.
Come on. And how much that lead cost you, Joe? Like probably $30.
Insane, dude. Right? The lead cost me $30. Right? Like there is no better lead out there. And so I really want to talk about the assumption, right? And I think so easily, again, because we're booking appointments, they're not showing up. All those are the numbers, right? And we get so tied up to the, hey, I'm not having the good results. Well, guess what? No one said those people were going to write a policy, right? So you just got to focus on the people that are showing up, because that's the important part, right? So I want to talk about the assumption and why our leads are the greatest in the whole wide world. And so I'm going to walk y'all through a little story. Some of y'all have heard it, some of y'all haven't, right? But we work with two main leads, right? It's either a CIA, that means, right, it's a call-in lead. So the letter CI stands for call-in, and then the letter A means it's a brand new lead. Or we work with an MIA, right, which is a mail-in. That's what MI stands for, and it's an A lead, right? So it's a brand new lead. I'm going to start with a mail-in lead. Why the mail-in lead is the best lead out there, right? It's a little bit pricier than the call-in lead, but it's the highest intent lead out there. And I want to walk y'all through a story of why you should assume when that puppy sends you a CBAC, or why when they're ready to show up, why you should assume you should be writing a policy 80 to 90% of the time. Like if you're not writing a policy, there's two things. One, they just didn't want it, and that's okay. Or maybe there's a little bit of opportunity where you can make sure you're running the best appointment that you can. That's it, right? So a mail-in lead, it's exciting. Most of these folks are buying the home for the very first time. It's one of the highest, most exciting times for them in their life. Y'all have to remember that, right? Folks are super stoked when they just bought a home. A lot of times it's their first home, so they're super excited. A lot of times it's their dream home, so they're even more excited. Okay. They just got in a relationship a lot of times, and they bought a home together, right? They came from two places and they're moving into one. There's just so much good in somebody going into a brand new home, right? Or again, right, it's their first home or their dream home. So remember, they're excited. Now they get a letter in the mail, right? And the letter says, hey, Paul opens it up and it says, hey, just bought your home. Don't you want to protect it? If something were to happen to you, right, we would pay off the house for your loved ones. If you were to get sick, they wouldn't have to worry, and you wouldn't have to worry about work because we would make the mortgage payments for you, right? If you were to have an accident, it would also get paid off, and all these things. And guess what? So more than likely, let's just say the wife opened it up or the husband opened it up, and they tell their other person, right, their other half, and hey, check it out. They're in the kitchen, right? They opened up the letter and they're like, hey, look, Elijah, we can protect it, right? We didn't even know this existed, because most of the time they don't even know this existed because the mortgage companies won't tell them. And they're like, hey, Elijah, look, we can protect it. And they're like, yes, fill it out. Please fill it out. Make sure, right? Put my name. Yes. Okay. Put it in an envelope. They got to literally fold this puppy back up, stick it in an envelope. Everybody laughs. They got to lick this thing, seal it. Disgusting. Germs everywhere, Nate. Right? They got to seal it. Then they got to leave it on the counter because they usually did it in the afternoon. And hey, Elijah, don't forget to put it in the mail tomorrow. Right? Who has a mailbox in front of their house? So rare. Everybody's got clusters now. Right? So there's even more work to get this puppy sent to Nate for him to call you. Right? So tomorrow in the morning, I got up, I got dressed, I made my coffee and take off to work. Darn it, I forgot the letter on the counter. So I get back home, right? The wife is like, hey, you didn't put the letter in the mail. Make sure you put it in the mail tomorrow. Okay, sweet. I forgot. Next morning, we're doing the same routine. She's like, hey, don't forget the letter, right? We want to make sure we get this coverage. Okay, now I got to drive the opposite way, go to my little mail cluster, put it in the mail. Then I can go to work. A lot of intent already just to get it to the mailbox. Then the letter shows up, right, to Symmetry. Nathan has a standing A lead order. They send it to him. He gets it. He calls randomly still at a random time, even though they filled out the form, right? It's still a couple of days later. And right, they're at the grocery store. Nathan calls and says, hey, I'm the agent assigned to you from that letter you responded to. And he's like, yep. But we're at the grocery store. I can't do it right now. Yes, exactly. That's exactly why I'm calling. I was seeing if you're available later tonight in the evening or tomorrow, right? We get to hop on Zoom and I'll show you what kind of protection y'all can put in place. They say, okay, great. Verify all the information. They book a time. They get email reminders. They get a Zoom link. They get text reminders. They send back a C and say, yes, right? We're going to show up at 6:30 tonight, Nathan. and then they show up. They show up on Zoom. The intent to show up on Zoom, they make sure, right, the laptop is ready. They make sure nothing's crazy in the background. They clean up a little bit, make sure, right, that they're presentable for you. And then they show up together on the appointment. These folks are not just shopping around. They want to make sure they get protection put in place. There is no higher intent lead than a MIA, right? Like, just assume these folks are showing up to get coverage. Now they're going to tell you all these other things, right? Because just like in car sales, they say, "Hey, I'm just shopping around. I'm just going to go look." No, nobody shows up to a Chevy dealership and says, "Hey, I'm just here to just look," right? Like, you got the Tahoe on their lot that they want, right? Like, that's the only reason they drove to your lot. They didn't go to your lot and you sell Chevy Tahoes, right? And they're looking for a Jeep, right? They're not shopping around. I promise you, those are just things that they're telling you that they want, right? When they show up, this is something that they want. You just got to help them understand how it's going to help them the best. That's all we do, right? So that's a mail-in lead. The next one is going to be a call-in lead. I love a call-in lead because I get it a little bit faster than a mail-in lead. How does a call-in lead? Same thing. They get the letter in the mail. Now, these are your feistier leads, right? Because these are reactive people. So they got the same mail-in letter in the mail. They open it up and they're like, nah, right? They're not proactive. They're reactive. Their little letter says, "Hey, your mortgage is in danger." And they're like, "Whoa, I don't want my mortgage to be in danger," right? So they call the number on there. They have to physically, right, dial your number on their cell phone.
Is that a landline?
This is a landline. You ever seen one of these?
I haven't seen one of those in a long time, bro. Dang.
Right? They pick up their phone. Okay, my bad here. Right? They get their phone. There's a code on their letter. It says enter the mortgage ID. It's like a 9-digit code. It's crazy, right? They call it, and then it says, and then it's automation that they got to type in stuff. I would never do this, Elijah, FY. That's why I love it, because I would never do it. So I know they're highly intentionally going through the whole process, right? So at any point, if they hang up, that means if they don't finish the phone call and they hang up, it does not become a lead. I love Symmetry for that fact. So then they have to finish the phone call. "This is your mortgage ID. This is for your house on 1934 East Easy Street. Is that correct?" Hit 1 for yes. Boop. Yes. "Please enter your age, 49. 49, is that correct?" Hit 1. Yes. Boop. Right? They got to go through this whole thing. And it goes through everything that's on the mail-in lead. It tells them, "Hey, if you were to pass away, right, it's going to cover your mortgage. If you get sick, it's going to cover your mortgage. Right? Is this what you're looking for? Enter your phone number that you want us to call," because you have their. So a really cool fun fact about a CI lead, you get 2 phone numbers. They usually look the same because one's the caller ID and one is the number that they typed in. So like yesterday, I had 2 different numbers on my call-in lead, right? The one he typed in, either he typed it in wrong or something happened. I typed the other one, the call-in lead, and he picked up because it was his caller ID. Right? They got to enter that number. You entered 702, blah, 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 and hit yes to confirm. That's the longest part. It's like a 7-8 minute phone call, Elijah, of "Do you agree?" Yes. The really cool part, as soon as they hang up, it dumps into your system within 30 seconds to a minute. There is nothing faster out there than getting a hold of that lead. We have the best leads out there. That's that process, right? Now, again, I love all the yeses that you want to hear, or that you actually hear, and I think sometimes we don't pay attention to them, right? So you usually hear anywhere from 5 to 7 yeses before they even show up to the quotes, right? So that means you ran the appointment and you finally got to the options, right? Because everyone thinks the first yes I get, Elijah, is when I show the options and they say yes to the $139 app. No, there's a whole bunch of yeses before that. Remember, the letter, they called it in or they mailed it in. That's a yes, because they actually looked at it. They saw what it was. or they called and they didn't hang up, they went through the whole process, and then they submitted it, that's the first yes. Even before that, they talked to somebody if it's a mail-in lead and they said, hey, babe, should we fill this in, right, and send it back? Yes. Then you randomly call them at a time and booked an appointment and they say, yes, that's a good time for me. Then you send an appointment confirmation and they send back a C and said, yes, I'm going to show up at 6:30 today. Then they actually show up and click on the Zoom link and show up together. That's another yes. We're at 5. Then you build rapport and do a role and purpose, and you say, hey, does that sound good to you? We're going to write some policies today. Yes. Then you go through the real script and you say one of the most important things. Based on what we're looking at in the information, Danelle, David, right? David's gone. Looks like there's only $3,000 left. Going out is $4,000. Looks like we should put something in place today. Do y'all agree? Yes. 7 yeses happen before you show them options. I love to talk about that story because so many times I think, Elijah, we get stuck on, right, this wasn't the one, this was, right, like all these other processes that deter. Remember, you're just weeding them out.
Yeah.
Those were never a yes, right? You didn't lose them in the process. They just because they didn't show up for their appointment, they no-showed, right? They told you no anywhere else. I mean, they're just weeding themselves out. We never said you were going to write every single one, right? This is just the process. If you get to that point, the likelihood of you writing an application should be 70 to 90%, as long as you're doing all the right things, right? Making sure it's a Zoom appointment, confirming they're both there, right? We did a training on getting around the think about it, right? Because you can't overcome a think about it. You got to make sure you just don't get them. So long as you did all that, right? That's how you know you should have some high assumption, right? That you're going to help that family. And Elijah, James, anything y'all want to add in that process, right? So many yeses. The assumption should be high. I mean, super high, right? Like when we show up to an appointment, it's like I got to be ready to write an app because more than likely they're going to say yes.
Yeah, and it's all just confidence when you're coming into the call. So that's 90%. So if you assume it, you're ready. Hey, you call for a reason, and everything you talk, you need to just be confident in what you're showing them, and you're just like, hey, I got A, B, or C. Which one do you want? So all we're doing is which one fits your budget, kind of thing. So they want the way they want it. They showed up for it. I mean, that's half the battle there. If they showed up for it, that's a matter of fact. I mean, people buy for 3 reasons: either they don't like you, but they already showed up, so that's out of the question. The other 2 is they don't understand it, or it's out of their budget. So you just need to make sure they understand what it does, how it covers them. So that's where you got to paint the picture, and then just showing them something within the budget, and you got that.
I think if you hit the nail on the head, James, like it really is all confidence. And when I was brand new, I showed up to appointments feeling like my job was to convince them that this was a good idea. Right? And that is not our job at all. Like whether you're calling leads, you're not trying to talk people and persuade them into booking an appointment with you. I'm assuming that they need the coverage because nobody's going to get junk mail, fill out their personal info, walk into their mailbox and send it back, answer the phone from an unknown number, book an appointment with that person, and then show up to the phone call just to get prices, y'all. Like people don't do that. People will tell you, hey, I'm just shopping around. That's a knee-jerk reaction to anybody who feels that you may be trying to sell them something. And you have to separate yourself from the 80 other phone calls that they get in a week trying to be sold something that they didn't ask for, to you're the person that is there to help them find the right type of mortgage protection that fits their needs best. They already need it. You'll get that objection every now and then. I got it this morning. I talked to a guy, it was an MIC lead, and he was one of the first things he said is, I'm just trying to get some prices. Of course, to be honest with you, Joseph, I don't even know if you need it yet. The goal of this phone call is to figure out what might work best for you. Most of the families that I help end up needing a little bit less than they think they do. But if we find a plan that you like, it's going to protect your daughters in the way that you want and it fits your budget. My job is to help you get approved for it. And so all we're going to do this morning is help you fill out an application to get you approved. Does that sound good? Yes. And so it really is confidence. And when you're brand new, you gotta create that confidence by getting some wins under your belt, because once you run 15 appointments in a week and you close 6 or 7 of them and you show up to that next appointment, you've already got your wins to where it's like, all right, I got another person I gotta go help. And so you have to have the confidence that the goal of this phone call is to take an application. It's not to convince them. And there is a few things, I'm sure we'll get into it, that you don't want to say during the appointment that can lead to you not closing a deal because of a lack of assumption. You know, like when I was brand new, one of the questions I would ask after I'm showing prices, do one of these work for you? Do you want to fill out an application today? Do you need some time to think about it? You know, that's just asking to not close a deal. And so confidence and assumption that you have to have them. And if you don't have them, I had to borrow confidence. I knew my upline Grant was closing deals left and right. And I'm like, if this guy can do it, surely I can. I just got to figure out what I'm saying wrong in the appointment that's leading to me getting to think about it, or I want to keep shopping around, you know?
Well, it looks like Sean, you got your hand up, buddy.
Yeah, I don't mean to interrupt, but there was a few production calls ago. You said something that just stood out in my mind, and it was an objection that I heard time in and time out. I've worked an A lead here and there, but we're looking at basically B leads. So probably people that talked to someone before didn't hear what they wanted to hear. That's why they didn't get it. All right. So the shop around thing, I hear that so often. Joe, you said something that just kind of landed in my head and stood there. And when they say, yeah, we're still shopping around, I didn't even get to the options yet. You know, I'm just basically telling them what we're doing. Oh, yeah, but we just want to let you know we're shopping around. I just say, yeah, so am I. Me too. Matter of fact, I work with all the carriers, and it's easier for me to shop around for you because I have direct access to them. Is that okay for you? Yeah. As, I write every application every time with that.
Love it. Love
I
it.
love it. One thing I wanted to build off what Elijah said too is that when we're new, and I definitely made this mistake, and I still make this mistake, you rely on the client to tell you how much confidence you should have, right? And as you get more experience, and this is why your activity is so important, you, instead of relying on how the client feels, how many objections they give you, how grumpy, dry. Joe, you had a super dry client that you ended up helping the other day. It was super just monotone, monosyllabic. Instead of depending on the client to tell you how much confidence you have, you depend on your system.
That's good.
That's good. I mean, again, I can't say this enough, right? Like if you showed up to my Zoom, I'm assuming I'm writing an application. I'm assuming I'm writing 4. If you don't assume that, you need to check yourself. If they show up on Zoom, you should be assuming you're writing 4 There is like nothing else in my mind other than, oh God, I better be ready. And how fast can I get this done? Because I got another appointment in like 30 minutes or an hour. How fast can I get these 4 applications submitted? There is nothing else in my mind, right? Like we did one live the other day, right? And it was super fun because they were super dry, right? And I had my Zoom open and I'm just going through the thing and showed them the option. And then I just got quiet, and it was awkwardly quiet for a very long time. I even had to do the good old water trick, like, hey, I'm gonna let y'all think about it. I've been talking all day. I'm gonna go get some water. I walked away and came back, and they still had me muted. But guess what? I assumed I was writing the application, so I didn't have to open my mouth. I did the best that I could running the appointment. Was it absolutely perfect? Probably not. Right? But I remember I had 7 yeses to get to that point. They were on Zoom. It was husband and wife. I did the best of my ability at that time. And at that point, it's my turn to just shut up. and just wait. And sure enough, they were like, oh, it's a little pricey. But what do you think? And I'm assuming, I'm like, okay, so y'all just want to do all four? Let's go ahead and start confirming the names. And they're like, yep, let's just go ahead and do that. $4,400. Instant approval.
Very assumptive. Because you didn't ask for another yes, Joe. You didn't ask again, are you sure this one will work for you? Do you guys want to go with this one? You're waiting for them to tell you this is too expensive. We need to bump it down. And you just went straight to the application. What's your middle name?
Yep. I love it, right? So assuming, and please, anyone, if y'all have questions, feel free to unmute, long as it's topic related, right? We want to make sure it's super interactive and we want to answer all y'all's questions. But, right, so that's assuming the sell. I hope y'all understand, because of all those yeses, if they show up on Zoom, you should assume you are writing 4 applications, right? 2 per person, if not more. You should assume you're getting an FIF, right? A reset, because these folks are high intent. There is no better lead out there, no matter what. I promise y'all, these are the highest intent. Even if you're working our bonus leads, it just, do you know how many of my leads I either don't call back because I got 40 of them coming in every single week? I go into my dialer and just shamefully, Elijah, I see that I've only called them like 3 or 4 times ever. And now it's a CIB, a CIC, a CID, right? Because I got 40 coming in every single week. And guess what? Every single time I dial, they pick up and I book. So I don't even call my other ones, right? Like, they're the greatest leads ever. And the system is the greatest system ever for you to get bonus leads, right? B's, C's, and D's. Daniel, you get unmuted, buddy.
Yeah, I got a question. I've been getting a lot of people who, when they show up to the appointment, they got the TV on in the background. They're like half there kind of thing. Like, what do you do to make sure in that moment? And also, how do you prep them even before that so they don't do that?
I'll take this one if that's cool with you guys, because I get this a lot, especially with old people. They're watching freaking Wheel of Fortune or Price is Right or some
One
stuff.
was so loud, I was like, I was
Yeah.
competing with the volume of it. I was like, oh my God, yeah.
So here's a really good phrase that has worked for me. I just say, hey, Daniel, I get easily distracted. Would you mind turning the TV down just so I can hear you guys a little bit better? Simple as that. But every now and then you're going to get people who are distracted. Like, full disclosure, I ran an appointment this morning on a guy who I thought was going to be home. Turns out he was driving to go pick his daughter up. Ran the whole appointment while he was driving, and wrote an application on him as he was sitting in the parking lot waiting for her to come out. And so he was distracted, but he wasn't telling me, hey, can you call me back later? I'm really busy right now, or I can't do this right now. I was just assuming this is a good time for you, so let's get on with it. And he was also super monotone, not really conversational, and so it was a little bit awkward. But I think it's easier to be assumptive when you build rapport and emotion beforehand. Because all of these build on to each other, right? Like, if you are asking the right questions in the emotional section, like, how long could your family afford to stay in the house if something were to happen to you? How much life insurance do you have? This guy in particular, he was 73, smoker, no health issues, but he only had 20 grand in coverage, and he had a $300,000 mortgage, and his daughters still lived with him. And so it was easy for me to help bridge that gap, because I just asked him, I was like, what did you get that policy for? Was it to take care of a funeral or burial expenses, or was it something else? And he's like, yep, that's exactly it. And then I said, so it sounds like you're looking for something separate to help take care of the mortgage so that your life insurance can go to your family. Is that right? Yes. You got another yes. And then it just comes down to being assumptive to transition to the application versus asking permission to fill out an application. And even if you do everything right, you'll still get the occasional, well, I need to crunch some numbers, work it into my budget, or I want to talk to my dog about it, or whatever people say, I need to pray about it, or whatever. And I let people know, look, you're not paying for anything today. The goal is to find something, if you're writing it with Americo, just to be clear, because you can post date it. All we're doing today is making sure that we can get you approved. I want you to think about it, and I definitely want you to work it into your budget. And like I said, this guy was driving. He was literally sitting in his parking lot. We did it over the phone. We were not on Zoom. I didn't know he was driving because it was super quiet when we first started going, and then I heard car noise. And so I let him know, look, all we're doing today is filling out an application to make sure that we can get you approved. Whenever you're approved, I'm gonna give you a call. If we need to make changes to it, we can. If we need to change the draft date, we can do that too. Does all that sound good to you? And most of the time, they're going to say yes. And the reason is, like Joe was saying earlier, people aren't going to jump through all of these hoops just to get prices. And if you get some unruly, crotchety person who's like, well, I just want to know how much it costs. I've literally told people, Daniel, you can Google the price of insurance. Like you can literally you can Google insurance quotes. Like you don't have to do all this to get a price. But the goal of this phone call is to figure out what you need, because you don't know what you need. You don't know how it works. You don't know which carrier is going to be good. You don't know what you qualify for. That's why we're talking. And I know all of that. And that is why I can have that conversation with somebody who's even distracted and have the assumption to fill out an application. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
But
makes sense.
don't be afraid to
I've
tell
been-
people to turn the TV down.
Recently got what you just described, which is like got that we were in the middle of the application. Oh, I think
I
I
just
just
tell
froze
people,
up.
hey,
Sorry.
turn the TV volume down so we can talk.
And I love it
Pretty
because
quick.
all this ties to the next part, right? Which is stop asking and tell, right? We
Joe,
are
really quick.
professionals.
I
Right.
just had a quick question about what he was saying right there, and he mentioned it earlier, so I want to make sure that I clarify this for myself because it has stopped me from saying, "Hey, let's just see what you get qualified for today," because I'm afraid of what they're going to say when I go to ask him for account information. So how do you buffer that from let's see if you get qualified to following through?
That's a good question. Well, the thing I want to hit on, Nicole, is it sounds like you're worrying about an objection before it ever even comes up, because you're worrying about what they're going to say when you get to bank info. You haven't even opened the application yet. And very rarely will you get that objection if you preface your role and purpose right. If you preface your role and purpose right, and you let them know my job is to help you find the right type of coverage that fits your needs, fits your budget, it's going to protect your family in the way that you want. And if it does what you need it to, all we're going to do this morning is I'm going to help you fill out a simple application. It takes about 10 minutes. Does all that sound good? It's to make sure we can get you approved. And then once we go over prices, people know that this isn't free. And so you got to pay for it somehow. And when we go over numbers, and I always show them 3 or 4 options, and I ask them which one fits your needs and your budget, and they pick one, then I will transition to the application. And I let them know when I'm pulling up the application, this will take us maybe 10 minutes. I'm gonna get some yes or no health questions from you, some personal info. I got to get a HIPAA signature from you so that they can do a prescription check and verify who you are. And then when I'm halfway through the application and we get to bank info, I keep it nonchalant, because what you make a big deal is a big deal. And so when we're filling out the bank info, the first question I ask them is, I'm like, hey, so for this plan, we could pick whatever day of the month you want it to come out. It's just like life insurance where it'll come out on a recurring draft. What day works best for you? Most people don't like the 1st because that's when the mortgage is paid. A lot of people do the 15th. They pick their day, and then I just say, what's the name of the bank you want to use? Put in the name of the bank. Okay, do you know your account info, or are you able to log into your bank app real quick and do this? I walked a 73-year-old man who was sitting in a parking lot through logging into his bank app on his phone this morning to find his bank info because he didn't know it off the top of his head.
Well,
He didn't give
you
me
know,
objection.
that really brings, right? Your clients don't have a problem with asking for bank information. Here's the real reality. You do, right? Like whatever objection you're getting, you're the one that has a problem with it. And there's little things that you're saying throughout your appointment that's making it weird. And that's why you can, right? You'll have these, man, I always get people that have problems with their bank information or that draft today, right? Because I'll have an agent say, hey, man, I'll write policies, but they all want pushed back the date. Guess what? It's not a coincidence that all your clients want to do that, right? Or, hey, I keep getting pushback on socials. right? Like several times they've told me they won't give me their social security. It's because you're making it weird. You're the uncomfortable one, and there's something in your appointment somewhere that's leading to stuff like that, right? Because trust me, there's a reason why everyone else's client gives us all their bank information, right? And it's making sure you don't make a big deal about it, right? You're not nervous about it. And right, affirmations are great. People give me their bank information and I write big apps, right? Because you'll have, right, a new agent a lot of times has a small app problem, right? Like I just write a whole bunch of little baby apps. It ain't the client, I promise. It's you, right? Because you don't want to show a big application. You don't want to show a $150 app. You don't want to show the appointment I sat with on Tuesday. It was $150 something, $150 something, $40 on the other one, and $23. I did not even show the other options, Elijah, because I knew what their budget was. They had over $1,000 of cleared, right, to be able to blow. And I'm like, well, then it sounds like you need this if you want the full coverage. I didn't even talk about the other three. And then I just got quiet, right? Like most of the time that y'all are getting objections, right, Nicole? I'm not saying that's what it is, but I bet you're probably saying little things that's making them uncomfortable when they get to the bank information. If you're going to get pushback on that, because
Yeah, I've
again,
never gotten any
assumption.
pushback on that. It's just I've never I when they say I'm shopping around, that's where I get hung up because I've been cautious at saying let's see if you qualify because I don't want them to get a hang up later. Like it's a preconceived thought like you said at first.
Yep, it's all in your
I'm
head, right?
anticipating because if they say they're just shopping around to me that says I don't have money to buy today. That's
Yep,
what that says to me.
correct, right? So it's just, oh, okay. So, and then onto your script, right? Like they're just knee jerk. Everyone says, hey, I'm just shopping around. Everyone says, hey, I'm not doing an app today. Everyone says, hey, I just need you to show me what this is because I don't, right? And move on, right? Don't even put thought, again, high assumption. They're showing up, you're writing an application. Sean,
Trust your system and your script. Don't depend on what they tell you.
right? I love that. So good, Nate.
Something
Thank
that's
y'all.
helped me prior to the appointment is a question I personally ask. Joe, what's your shoe size?
14.
14? Okay. So if you feel uncomfortable or anything and you're not sure you're talking to the same person and you ask me, hey, Sean, what's your shoe size? And I'm wrong, I want you to hang up. But if I say 14, you know it's me, right?
Love
It
it.
builds trust. I'm telling you, it really does. Shoe size. Who would have thought? Me. I don't know why I did, but it works.
I like that.
I love
One
it.
thing I do, this is super simple, is during the when I'm building rapport, I make sure that I give them my state specific license number because I work all over the country. And so on my contact card that I text them once I book an appointment, that just has my resident license. And so I got a lady this morning who was really iffy about talking to me. And I was like, hey, no worries. In today's day and age, you can't be too careful. I want to assure you I'm a real person. Do you have something you could write with real quick? Because at this point, I've already texted her my contact card. But I gave her my Delaware insurance license number and her demeanor completely changed. She was like, that's exactly what I needed. I just wanted to make sure. And I ran the appointment and got to think about it. I have a follow up with her tonight at 5. And I gave her a heads up. And I said, look, I don't want to catch you off guard. If we find one that, I mean, she told me she's going to do one and she already gave me a referral too. But I let her know, hey, this evening at 5, when I call you back and we fill out these applications, it's going to take about 15-20 minutes. I'm going to have to get some personal info from you, pretty much the same thing that you did when you got your life insurance policy. I'm going to get your height and weight, driver's license number, social, bank info, and a couple e-signatures just to give you a heads up. And so don't be afraid to do that. If you're getting somebody, kind of gauge it. I don't say that every time, but if I get somebody who is saying something that makes me think they don't totally trust me, I just am clear on what we're going to do. But most of the time, you're not going to get a bank account objection unless they don't trust you, or maybe they've been scammed in the past. I've gotten that too.
Right.
So,
And again, I love all these questions, right? And because all this goes to the next part of stop asking and tell. right? Because if you have very high assumption, you're just telling, why are you worried about if I tell them I'm going to take a nap that they're going to have to pay today? Why are you worried that I'm going to have to ask them for their social? Why are you worried that you're going to have to ask them for their bank information they're going to draft out of their bank today? Right? You should have very high assumption that they're getting these policies. It was $362 on Tuesday. I wasn't worried that, oh my God, they're going to draft $362 out of their bank account tonight. It's very high assumption. This is what you want. This is what protects you. You have the budget to do it. They're going to go ahead and draft that tonight. And they're going to draft that every month on the 4th. Okay? I was not asking for permission, right? So we're going to give you all some really cool places that you should be making sure you're telling folks and not asking folks to help you, right? Again, have a higher close rate and help more families. I want to start at the dialing, booking an appointment, right? Some folks said, hey, you know, Zoom appointments, I want to make sure I get them on there, right? Again, making sure you're not asking. When you're booking the appointment, you verify, they say, yes, 3 o'clock tomorrow. Great. Give me your email address so I can send you the appointment confirmation. And in that email, then they give me their email. Now I'm like, hey, it's going to send you that email. Inside of that email, have you ever used Zoom before, Amber? Yes. Great. You're just going to have to click on that link and I'm going to be able to share my screen and go over their options for you. Have you ever used Zoom before, Amber? No. No worries. It's going to be super easy. All you got to do is click on that link and I'll be able to, if you have any trouble, I'll help you. I'll make sure I call you a little bit before if you can't get on and I'll walk you through that process. I'm not asking, nowhere in there am I asking for permission to hop on Zoom. I am the professional. The doctor, in fact, it goes the other way sometimes too. I booked my eye appointment. I talked about this last time. I wanted a doctor to look at my eyes. I have horrible vision. Nope, I showed up. They said, hey, Joe, go ahead and hop in that room. You're going to do a Zoom appointment for your eye doctor. They didn't ask me. They told me what was happening. We are a licensed insurance professional. We make doctor money because we are just as important and probably more important because we protect their family the day something bad happens. And you better assume and you better tell folks how the process works so that you can best help them. And the process is, I booked an appointment. We're going to hop on Zoom. Stop asking, is it okay if you hop on Zoom? Would you prefer Zoom or over the phone? Right? Assumption. Have you ever used Zoom before because they're 75 years old? And then we're like, I know it's a little hard, but have you ever used, is it okay if I can get you on Zoom? Those are questions, right? You're assuming they're going to hop on. Great. I'm going to send you a Zoom link. You'll click on there. I'm assuming if they have trouble, I'm going to help them. So if you have any trouble hopping on Zoom, Roger, I'll just go ahead and call you a little bit after, right? And I'll walk you through that process.
I love that part
I'm
too, if I
assuming.
can piggyback on that, Joe. Because like especially with our older clients, right? Like we're assuming that they're going to be tech challenged. But I've had an 80-year-old woman said, I use Zoom every day. You don't have to walk me through it. Great. I'll see you tomorrow. So don't assume, right?
And even if they never have, right? And they
right.
struggle, assume you're going to help them through the process and get on Zoom and you're going to run an appointment, right? Like we control our appointments and the way it works. And a couple of other asks, right? Is it okay if I book an appointment with you? Is it okay if I ask you a couple of health questions right now? Right? Guess what folks are going to say if you ask? They're going to say no. You are literally opening the doors to no's, right? Is it okay if they draft out of your account today? Is it okay if you give me your bank information? Hey, and so when you do your role and purpose, how do you sound on your role and purpose, right? My role and purpose is, it's strong. If I go through my role and purpose, I'm writing an application on you. Nicole, thanks for sharing about your kids, right? I love it. All those kids, it's crazy. I got 4, but you must have a lot. You got a lot of work, mad respect. But let me go through my role and purpose, Nicole. Again, my name's Joe Martinez. I'm the agent assigned to you. My role and purpose today is to find you the most amount of coverage for the least amount of premium. The way I get to do that, Nicole, is I work with all the insurance carriers, so I shop around for you to get you the best options. What we're going to do today in the appointment, I'm just going to verify any health conditions if you did have any. I'm going to go over your finances a little bit, not to be nosy, just to make sure you even need this. I speak to some families that don't need the coverage, right? Whether they got $1 million in their bank account, a rich uncle, ha ha ha. Usually not the case. And they're like, yep, nope. And so that's usually why we find a need for this. So I'm going to show you what I normally see other families do. Whichever options you like, I'll let you pick those. What I do is I just simply fill them out online. Usually it's going to give me an instant approval. As soon as you're approved, they're going to draft out of your account, mail you a policy. That sound good? Great. I'm going to start with all the basic information. So I got your address is this, right? Like I am telling them what's about to happen. I'm assuming we're going through this, right? Like you stop asking for permission because your role and purpose can very easily sound like, and so what I'll do in the appointment, if it's okay with you, I'll ask you a couple of questions, and if it's all right, we're going to get some bank information, and if you let me, right, is it okay, right, we're going to go through it. Why are you asking, is it okay? You have to make sure you're telling them what to do, right? Because I've said this before. So these folks, high intent, right? They showed up to your appointment, realize they're writing an app. Our job is to go through the process, give them the experience of working with an agent. And how you give them the experience, right, is you're telling them what's going to happen, right? So it's stop asking questions, right? And right, you're making statements and saying, hey, this is what's going to go on, right? Ask the questions to build rapport and all that, right? I'm not saying that. I want to make sure we're clear, right? But when you're not asking for permission to do things in the appointment, right? You tell them what's the next step, and they love it. They want to be told what to do. They don't know how to do this, right? So now, hey, now it's your job. This is why it's in the script. So, hey, when I show you the options, your job is to pick the options that best work for you. Your job is to tell me if this is within your budget or you're comfortable or not. Again, I'm telling them what their job is. I'm not asking. I'm not saying, hey, and then right, if it's okay with you, you can pick a couple. No, your job is to tell me which options work best for you. Your job is to tell me if this is a little too tight. We can make sure we lower the options. Your job is to tell me blank, right? Your job is to pick the options, and we're going to fill out the application. Then you'll give me some of the information that I'm going to ask, right? But it's all about, right, how you're the assumption, the posture, right? And stop asking, right? I can't say that enough, right? And is it okay if we fill out the applications? No, we're writing them right now. And then that leads to, right, keywords that hurt your sales. And I want to make sure we talk a lot about these. So we got about 10 minutes, right? Elijah, James, y'all are really good, and Amber and Nathan too, right? Like keywords that can hurt your sales and keywords that help seal the deal too, right? Because they're telling us yeses in so many different ways, and I think sometimes we don't hear them. Because if you run a proper appointment and you get all your yeses, when you do the first part of the script that explains what mortgage protection is, right? It's some folks get half, right? Some of it, we get the whole thing. And you go over that, you almost got the policy sold right there. Right now, it's just your job to do a really good FIF, right? A financial information form, to see how much they would qualify for financially, right? Because if you do it properly, you have it sold. The assumption is through the roof. It's like, I just need to find out what's going to be their best options, right? So I want to talk about some of the keywords, and some of the first ones that I love to talk about, right, is onlys, right? Make sure when you're going over coverage, we stay away from onlys, expensive, right? Those are usually the ones that'll stop you from getting the policies that is best for the client, because you're thinking about your own wallet, right? So when you're showing a $300 application or policy, be very careful. You're not saying, hey, this is the most expensive option, or this one's really pricey, or you literally implant the I've heard everything, right? Like I've heard agents say, hey, normally folks don't even get this because it's the most expensive, or it's very expensive. Like, What are you doing? Right? Don't tell them what's expensive. You don't know what's expensive to them. Right? I use the word only, but to my benefit. When I show a $350 option, it's like, hey, and it's only 352. It really is. Right? Not, hey, this is the most expensive one, or this one's a little pricey, right? So be careful with that, how you're saying it. And then only is a really big one when you're showing accidental, because we teach you to write multiple applications. You want to write 4, right? So stay away from only when you say, hey, it only pays if this happens. It only does this. It only, right? No, let's talk about the positive stuff, right? It's going to cover you no matter where you're at, as long as you're in an accident, right? If you have an accident, it's going to pay the full benefit amount, right? If you're writing the Mutual of Omaha, as long as you're not in California, right? It's going to give you up to 12 months to pass away of any complications of the accident, and it's going to pay out, right? Now I'm going to use the word only to my benefit. And 500,000, Elijah, is only $60. Right? So you have to be careful how you use your words so that you're not killing your own sales. James, Elijah, any of the words that hurt you?
Yeah, so you just say, hey, you could pick, like when you're showing the accidentals and both, using or, be like, hey, you could choose accidental, or we could do the mortgage protection. Great word is, hey, this is additional. Hey, this is a great add-on to combine it with this to get the full mortgage. So I like to use the word additional, or put it together. I always combine them together. So
that's good, right?
don't use the word or.
Yeah, don't say or, right? Because hey, you can get this or that.
Yeah, no, that's something I used to do, and I used to get like a lot of smaller policies, and they were choosing based on price, not what it is. So I was like, if anything, I'm asking more. So if they choose the bottom one, hey, kind of like, hey, would you like fries with that? Hey, do you want the accidental? Do you want 200,000 or the 100,000? I'm assuming they want that one too.
I say which one a lot. Like when I'm showing my 3 or 4 options. Last night, for example, I wrote a lady lighthouse lead. I showed her 4. I showed her 3 of the mortgage payment protection for 2 years, year and a half, year, and she didn't have any life insurance. So I showed her like a final expense whole life policy as well. And I asked her, her name was Cynthia. I said, Cynthia, between these 4, which one fits your needs and your budget best? And she's like, I want that one and that one. And so she picked option B, which was 18 months of mortgage payments plus the additional 10,000 in coverage. So she's got one policy that does both. If I were to say something like, do any of these work, sounds very, very different than which one fits your needs and your budget. Then when she picked it, I'm like, I think that's a great plan. Is that something you can be comfortable with each month? Because I don't want you to pick something you think you can manage. There's a big difference between the two. And she's like, no, this is great. This will give me a lot of peace of mind. I said, perfect. I'm pulling up the application real quick. And so whenever people, like, you got to recognize the sale is made when you're explaining the mortgage protection and you've built emotion and you ask them which one sounds like it fits your needs best. Before you ever even show prices, they've bought. They know they need mortgage protection. Now it's just coming down to which one fits their needs and their budget best. And so I like using which one. I never say think about it during the appointment, ever, 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 unless you want them to think about it. If they're giving me weak language, like, I think I can afford this, I'm talking them down to get a smaller one. Like, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I say like that would be strong language, but which one? I love only a lot. I don't say do I think I already said this, but do one of these work for you? Don't say that. Do you want to fill out an application today? I say I'm gonna pull up the application real quick. I'm gonna get a quick couple e-signatures from you. It'll take us 10 minutes and I'll get out of your hair. And they just go along with it because they don't know what the next step is.
Yeah, and right, this kind of goes into, right, make sure you're hearing the yeses, right, and move on to the app. So Elijah, you said, I think this might work for us, right? A lot of times we're like, oh, this might be too expensive for them. We go the other way, right? Because we're nervous, right? Like, oh, I hope if they say, I think this might, that's a yes. That's a, hey, do we need to lower it a little bit to make sure it's comfortable? But that's a yes, right? They're telling you that I think this is going to work, but maybe the price is a little bit too high. You might need to lower the option, but that's a hard yes because they're saying this works for us, right? I just don't, I think 150. Okay, no worries. We can make it 120. That sound better? Yes. Boom. Right. So I want to hit on yeses. And remember, yeses come in so many different ways. We got to listen to the language that they're saying, right? We would just, in a perfect world, we would like them, Amber, to just say, yes, I want this one, and this one. Those do come up, right? But it's almost never like that. It's almost always like, well, I mean, I like the full mortgage payoff, or I like the half. That's a yes. Move on. Great. Middle initial, blam, right? You got to hear their yeses. It doesn't always sound right. It's not 3-letter word sometimes. It's I think that'll work. I like this one. Yeah, that looks like what we wanted, right? Or that looks good for us. Those are yeses. Do not panic because it wasn't a 3-letter word, yes, and start showing, right? We ruined the sale because all of a sudden they said, well, I think that'll work. And instead of understanding that that's a yes, we go to, well, maybe I can look at a term for you. And right? No. It was a yes. We just got a little scared, right? Because it wasn't a yes, right? I think that'll work for me does not mean start showing them different options. It means pull the trigger. They're ready for you to help them and protect them. You just got to get them approved now. Right. So, and James, and I know you always have some really good ones, right? And Elijah, anything like that, right? Like, how many different ways have we heard yes? And I want to make sure, I think this is really important. I bet a lot of times y'all get to showing the options, and sometimes you don't take the app because it wasn't YES. James, you want to add any of those?
Yeah, I mean, probably 90% it's never just yes, that works. It's always that I think that works, or that fits, or that'll fit my budget, or I'll start with this. Like, perfect, great. And I mean, and something I just go for is I go for no. So if they only chose one, I'm like, hey, I usually
so
show like
good.
if I'm showing for like a 200, 300, I'm like, well, and I still I push it. So I like to push it until I get it like a couple no's. So if they
Yeah.
tell me no, what I have on top, nah. I'm like, hey, we could even do half. So I even go lower, something that's not on there. Hey, we could even do 100,000 for like half the price, and it'll cover some of the other expenses we have. That way, and I always like to paint the picture of what they tell me that they have and stuff. So you got to paint the picture for them and what it's being used for. So, especially if you're doing equity protection, hey, it's like, hey, this is the no-brainer. We're gonna get the accidental no matter what. So, hey, this is what we'll put in place, to cover the full mortgage. And then the bottom one, we'll just decide what fits our budget to, guarantee if anything happens. So, having that posture as well. And if they just say, hey, I think at the bottom one, the 12 months will go, I'll push for the top one and be like, hey, do you want to do the 200 or the 100,000 accidental? And they're like, nah, it's kind of too much. I was trying to say, it's like, if we could go a little bit less here, I push. So I know they say no to those. Hey, I could do half of whatever I'm showing. So I'm showing 300 or 400,000. I'll show them a 2 or 300, and get something that I'll keep pushing.
So. I love it. Now I want to add real quick, right, Danelli, but that's the power of Zoom too, right? Like sometimes they're saying whatever they're saying, but they're going like this. That's a yes. They may not be saying why yes, right? But they're like, well, I mean, that's a little tight, and let me look at my budget. But they're going like this. That's great. Which one do you think is going to fit your right? Which one are you comfortable with now? Well, I'm good with it. Perfect. I'm writing the app. If you're on Zoom, they're doing this. That is so good to know. Like they're
actually
looking
do
at
it
each other
too.
and they're like, yeah, but
They'll
they're not
copy you
saying yes.
too.
It's hilarious.
And if you start doing it with them, they'll start, yeah, they'll go with you. And then I just, perfect. Hey, can I get your date of birth?
Well, 2 more minutes. Elijah, anything, right? How do you hear yeses?
Man, I mean, I don't hear yes too many different ways from what's been talked about. Sometimes people say, yeah, that one sounds good, or I like this one. Or my favorite way to ask is when I show them prices, I say between these three, which one fits your needs and your budget? And they tell me yes by saying, I like option B, or let's go with C. They just tell me which one. And I'll ask for another yes when I say, I think that's a great plan. Is that something you could be comfortable with each month? Because I want to make sure it's not something you think you can manage. Oh, yeah, we can handle that just fine.
Mhm.
Perfect. What's your middle name? And we just pivot to the application.